Recently, I had a back and forth with a Baptist pastor about the word baptism. And in that discussion, he said something that I used to lean on pretty heavily myself when I was a Baptist, that the word baptism literally means immersion. So if you weren't immersed, then it doesn't count. Pretty straightforward. And I admit that on the surface, something about that just feels right. But the implications of that claim are not small, which is primarily why it interests me. Because it's not just that most Christians have been wrong about baptism for nearly 2,000 years, it's that billions of Christians throughout history, including millions today, were never actually baptized. Which is why in this video, I'm not going to rehash the same tired baptism debates that we've all heard 100 times. There's actually something underneath this argument that's bigger than that. That's what I want to highlight. Something I never hear anyone address. So why does that argument feel so convincing to the people who make it? It's not just the definition, but the move that's underneath it. You take a word, go back to the original language, and it feels like you've cut through all the noise. No tradition, no interpretation, just the word itself. And it's understandable why, when you do that, it can feel like the conclusion isn't coming from you anymore. It's just coming straight from the text. And that's what gives this argument its perceived weight. At least it did for me. I was convinced this objectively settles that this is what Scripture so obviously teaches. But that only works if that's how meaning works. And it doesn't. Words don't come preloaded with one fixed meaning that you just pull out of a dictionary. They have a semantic range, and that range then gets narrowed down by how the word is then used in any given context. So when you open a lexicon and see a list of definitions, that's not telling you what the word has to mean. It's showing you what the word can mean. And those are not the same thing. This entire line of argumentation depends on taking something a word can mean and turns it into what it must mean every time. As John Murray points out, the question is not whether the word may refer to immersion, but whether it means immersion in a way that excludes other modes. This is the precise question that is relevant to the Baptist contention. In other words, can mean is not the same thing as must mean. And you can actually watch this play out, not just with this word, but in how Scripture uses language like this more broadly. Take something like Leviticus 14. You have a bird being dipped into blood, not immersed, but dipped. And then that blood is sprinkled. There's no scenario there where immersion even makes sense. And that's exactly the point. A word is being used, but the action doesn't match what people assume it has to mean. You see the same thing over and over again regarding the word dip. A finger dipped in oil, food dipped into sauce, a rod dipped in honey, which showcases a variety of modes, even though it's the same word being used. So now you're starting to see that this kind of language isn't tied to one fixed form of action. That's just not how this kind of language works, even in Scripture. And when you arrive at the New Testament, this same pattern shows up again, now with the word baptizō. Take something like Mark 7:4. You have references to baptizing hands, even household items. Or in Luke 11:38, where we find a Pharisee is surprised that Jesus didn't baptize before dinner. Notice how the word is being used. These aren't explanations of a specific mode. They're casual references in everyday situations, which means the word doesn't function like a technical term where it always carries one specific requirement. It's used more broadly than that. But what's even more interesting is how this played out historically. During the Protestant Reformation, groups like the Anabaptists emerged, arguing that the Reformers hadn't gone far enough, especially when it came to baptism. They began to argue that baptism was tied to personal faith and voluntary commitment, which led to a rejection of infant baptism and an insistence on believers' baptism exclusively. But in the middle of all of that, notice something surprising that shows up. Balthasar Hubmaier was a leading Anabaptist theologian, and as J.V. Fesco notes, in 1525, when he and 60 others decided to be rebaptized, Hubmaier did so by pouring a bucket of water over the people. So even here, this wasn't some universally settled linguistic conclusion. It was a theological argument that they made, and those are not the same thing. This was debated in real time and applied inconsistently. And it's not just here. You see the same thing even earlier. You'll often hear Baptists appeal to the 2nd century document, the Didache, where it implies that immersion is the preferred mode. And that's true. But notice what it doesn't do. It doesn't treat immersion as the only valid form. It explicitly allows for pouring when immersion isn't possible. If an exception is allowed, then it's not a strict requirement, which is why this has never been a case of, well, the Greek just makes it obvious. This was a contested question about what baptism actually requires. And what's also interesting, or maybe even more interesting, is that while Hubmaier was absolutely wrong about rebaptism, the mode he used was entirely biblical. In numerous places in the Bible, we see that pouring and sprinkling are regularly associated with the reception of the Spirit, things that the Bible consistently connects to baptism, once again showing this is not limited to a single mode. So this isn't just about baptism, it's actually about how arguments get built. Immersion is a perfectly valid mode of baptism, but the word itself doesn't require it. And that's the problem. Not that people care about the original language, but that often gets used to like a shortcut, to force a conclusion that the word itself can't carry. Which is why I said at the beginning, there's something I hardly see anyone mention about this argument. And it's this. If you've been told this whole debate comes down to a single Greek word, you're not just getting a weak argument. You're not even hearing the historic Baptist one, even if it's coming from a Baptist.